This might be the wildest fallout we have seen between two NBA guys in a long time. We are talking about Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sochan, and what happened between these two during the finals is actually insane, no cap. Picture this, the biggest game of the entire season, championship on the line.
Looking at him, then he comes over again to give a little bit more chirping. This is the chirping that you want. If I'm the Knicks, hey, that's...
And Jeremy Sochan walks up to his own former best friend, and Wemby just hits him with a shoulder and keeps walking like the man doesn't even exist. Like he's a stranger. Bro, I'm not even lying. That clip broke the internet. And it doesn't even stop there, gang. After the game ends, after everything is decided, Sochan goes to find his old guy's hand out, looking for a little respect, and they just walk right past him. Same energy. Y'all are not ready for how cold this whole situation got. I promise you that. But before we even get into that, let me break down a few things that's gonna blow your mind. Because this story is way deeper than just one shoulder bump, gang. These two were not just teammates, they were brothers. Hugging after wins, laughing on the bench, the whole thing. And then it all just fell apart right there on national television in front of millions of people. So buckle up, because we about to break this whole thing down from the very beginning. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why Victor Wembanyama looked his old friend dead in the face and acted like he wasn't even there. Alright, so let's start from the top because y'all need the full picture here. What if I told you that Jeremy Sochan was actually the first person to welcome Victor Wembanyama to the Spurs before Wemby even got drafted? Like before the cameras, before the introductory press conference, before any of that hype. Get this, San Antonio drafted Sochan 9th overall back in 2022. Dude came from European basketball, grew up bouncing around Poland and Britain, total grinder, total dog on the floor. Then a year later, the entire planet is losing its mind over this 7'4" French phenom named Victor Wembanyama, the most hyped prospect since LeBron James. No cap, and before Wemby even put on the Spurs jersey for real, it was Sochan who reached out first. Wemby has said this himself, that Sochan was literally the first guy from that organization who made him feel like part of the squad. Bro, that's actually crazy when you think about it. Two young guys, both with deep European roots, instantly connecting before the rest of the world even got to see what Wembanyama could do. And from there, it just exploded, gang. These two were everywhere together. I'm talking hugging after wins, consoling each other after the brutal losses, because let's be real, San Antonio was not winning a whole lot during this stretch. Wemby crouching down just to talk to Sochan on the bench because of the height difference. Sochan jumping on his back after a buzzer beater. These two were on every road trip together, every flight, every bus ride to shoot around, to the point where people around their team just stopped seeing them as two separate guys. They were a package deal. Y'all seeing this? This is real, genuine friendship we're talking about here. Not some fake good teammates energy you see all over the league. Wembanyama has talked about how much it meant having a guy who treated him like a normal human instead of a walking highlight reel. And that guy, for 2.5 straight seasons, was Jeremy Sochan. Let me break it down even further, gang, because this is important context. San Antonio during these years was straight up rebuilding. We're talking lottery picks, blowout losses, the whole 9 yards. And in the middle of all that losing, these two found each other. That's not nothing. That's not just two guys being polite for the cameras. When you go through hard seasons together, when you're getting blown out on a Tuesday night in some random city and nobody's watching, the relationships that form in that environment are usually the realest ones in the entire sport. So when people talk about how close Wemby and Sochan were, they're not exaggerating, gang. This was forged in actual adversity, not in some championship locker room where everybody's smiling because they're winning. No cap. So hold that thought, because here's where it gets insane. In February of this year, out of nowhere, the Spurs waived Jeremy Sochan. Just like that, the only NBA team he had ever known, the franchise that drafted him, decides he's not part of the future anymore. And 2 days later, 2 days bro, he signs with the New York Knicks. The guy who built his whole career and his closest friendship in San Antonio is now wearing a totally different jersey on the other side of the country. That's wild on its own. But chat, are we surprised by what happened next? Because 2 months after Sochan posted a thank you message to the Spurs on his way out the door, his new team and his old team end up facing each other in the NBA Finals. The actual finals. What are the odds, gang? I gotta say, when Sochan posted that thank you message, that wasn't the energy of a guy who was bitter about getting cut loose. He actually said San Antonio had become the longest he'd stayed in one place since he was a teenager bouncing between basketball academies over in Europe. So this wasn't some nasty breakup, at least not at first glance. This was a guy genuinely grateful for his time there. Which makes what happens next even more confusing, gang, because something clearly shifted once that finals matchup got set. And here's where Sochan does something that genuinely shocked people. Before the series even tips off, he sits down with a reporter and basically hands the Knicks the blueprint on his old best friend. Word for word, listen to this. He said being that tall, Wemby gets tired. Give him different looks, stay physical, make him run, and eventually he's gonna have to take plays off. Yo, that's actually crazy. That's not just basketball talk, that's giving away insider information on the body, the fatigue patterns, the breaking point of the guy he used to call his brother, to the team trying to eliminate that exact guy from the championship. I'm not even lying, when this got out, the basketball world was buzzing, because that is a bold move, gang. Use what you know to help your new team win. Sure, I get it, but you already know that's gonna get back to Wemby. And you already know that's gonna sting different coming from someone who used to know him better than almost anybody else in the league. And the crazy part, gang, is that Sochan wasn't even forced into saying any of that. Nobody dug up an old quote and twisted it. He said this on the record, on purpose, knowing exactly where it was going to end up. That tells you something about where his head was at going into that series. Whatever was going on between these two by that point, holding back clearly was not part of the plan anymore. So now the tension is building, right? The whole series, everybody's watching to see if this thing is going to boil over. And gang, IT did. Let me tell you exactly how this went down. Game 5, San Antonio, Spurs down 3-1, fighting for their entire season. First quarter, Wemby is locked in, playing lights out defense, and the cameras catch Sochan running his mouth from the bench the entire time, chirping at him non-stop the whole quarter. At one point during a live possession, it actually gets under Wemby's skin enough that he reaches over and smacks Sochan on the chest, like a little warning shot right when the refs aren't looking. Bro, that should have been the end of it, right? Most guys back off after that. Not Sochan. Next time out, both teams head into their benches, and Sochan walks right up to Wembyama, still talking, still trying to get under his skin. And what does Wemby do? He does not say a single word. He just lowers his shoulder, catches Sochan straight across the chin, and keeps walking to his bench with his hands on his hips like absolutely nothing happened. No eye contact, no words, nothing. Bro, that's actually crazy. He treated his former best friend like he was a complete stranger standing in his way. And y'all, that clip went everywhere within minutes. Millions of views before the game was even over. Commentators are calling it out live on the broadcast. Chat was going crazy, fans splitting into two camps instantly. Half of them defending Wemby like, what does Sochan expect? You bump into a guy and trash talk him and you want a hug back. And the other half feeling for Sochan, saying, bro, he didn't even choose to leave San Antonio, give the guy a little grace. Either way, gang, that moment, Wemby giving his old best friend a literal cold shoulder, that became one of the moments of this entire finals. Let me break down why this hit so different for people watching at home. This wasn't some random opponent talking trash that Wemby was tuning out. Trash talk happens every single night in this league. Nobody bats an eye at that normally. What made this one blow up is exactly what it was coming from. This was the guy who used to ride shotgun with him on every road trip. The guy who jumped on his back after wins. And Wemby looked at him with the same energy you'd give a random stranger who walked up to you in the street trying to start something. That's the part that made people's jaws drop. No cap. And here's what made it hit even harder. Before the series, there was this one little clip of Wemby giving Sochan a quick tap, almost like a courtesy nod between two guys who used to mean something to each other. But by game 5, that was completely gone. People online were pulling up the old footage and putting it side by side with the new clip. Hugs and laughs on one side, a shoulder to the face on the other. Bro, the whiplash of watching those two videos back to back, that's exactly why this thing blew up the way it did. It wasn't just a random NBA beef. It was a literal friendship falling apart in real time on the biggest stage in the sport. But check this out, gang, because the story does not stop there. This is where it gets even more insane. Despite barely playing the whole series, despite logging almost no real minutes through the entire playoffs, Knicks head coach Mike Brown makes a decision late in game 5 that nobody saw coming. With the title on the mind with seconds left on the clock, he puts Jeremy Sochan directly on Victor Wembanyama. Think about that for a second. The coach trusted the one guy who used to know Wemby better than literally anyone else on planet Earth, to be the guy standing in front of him with the championship hanging in the balance. The forgotten man on the bench all series suddenly locked in defensively against the same person he used to call his brother for 2.5 straight seasons. Y'all are not ready for stuff like this, I promise you. No cap, that's one of the wildest coaching decisions I've seen in a long time. You got a guy who hasn't played meaningful minutes basically the entire postseason, and your head coach decides that's the guy he wants guarding the best player in the world with a championship on the line. Why? Because Sochan knows every single one of Wemby's tendencies, knows when he gets tired, knows how he likes to set up in the post, knows his footwork better than almost any scout could write up on paper. That's the whole reason Sochan was even useful in that series in the first place, and Mike Brown clearly understood that and used it at the exact right moment. In Wemby, he balled out in that first half, racking up blocks, playing some of the best defense of his life, helping San Antonio build an early lead that had everybody thinking they might actually steal this game and force a game 6. But the Knicks made their adjustments, the Spurs offense dried up in the second half, and it came down to the wire. Jalen Brunson goes off for 45 points, just an absolute legendary closeout performance, and the Knicks escape with a 94-90 win on the road in San Antonio. 4-1, the New York Knicks are NBA champions for the first time since 1973. 53 years. Gang, 53 years. And Jeremy Sochan, the guy who barely played this entire series, walks away with a championship ring too, guaranteed under league rules just for being on that roster. And gang, this wasn't just some random finals nobody cared about either. Every single game in this series got decided in the final possession. Every game. That's basically unheard of at this level. And the numbers backed it up too. This finals averaged over 20 million viewers, the most watched postseason this league has had since 1998. So when I tell you the entire basketball world had their eyes locked on this series, I mean it, no cap. Which makes everything that happened between Wemby and Sochan hit even harder, because it wasn't happening in some random regular season game nobody's watching. It was happening with the biggest audience the sport has had in almost 3 decades. But yo, the story is still not over, because what happened right after that final buzzer might be the craziest part of this whole thing, no cap. So the game ends, right? And the Knicks are losing their minds, hugging, crying, 53 years of waiting finally over. And the Spurs, they don't stick around. Wembanyama finishes the night with 19 points. 14 rebounds, 5 blocks in a losing effort, and he just untucks his jersey and heads straight for the tunnel. Doesn't look for Brunson, doesn't look for anybody in a Knicks jersey, just gone, bro. And it wasn't just him. As a team, the Spurs basically skipped the entire post-game handshake line, which almost never happens at this level, especially after a series this close where literally every single game came down to the final minute. Fans online went off immediately, calling it classless, saying no matter how bad the loss hurts, you gotta show some respect at the end. But here's the part that ties this whole story together, gang. Listen close. While his old teammates are heading for the tunnel, Jeremy Sochan tries to do the right thing. Cameras catch him walking up to his former Spurs guys with his hand out, looking for a simple dap, a little respect after a hard-fought series. And almost every single one of them just walks right past him, doesn't stop, doesn't even look at him. Same exact energy Wemby gave him just minutes earlier on the court. I'm not even lying. That footage went viral all over again the next day when a new camera angle dropped, and whoever cut that video together knew exactly what they were doing, because they spliced in old footage of Wemby and Sochan hugging it out back in their Spurs days, right next to the new clip of him getting walked past like a ghost. Bro, that's actually crazy. That hit different, gang. Think about how that must have felt for a second, gang. You just won a championship. You're guaranteed a ring no matter what happens. League rules say so. But instead of celebrating with your new team right away, your first instinct is to go find the guys you used to call family and try to make peace. Try to show respect after a brutal series. And they just blow right past you like you're invisible. That's not even a basketball thing anymore at that point. That's just a human thing, and it's part of why this clip hit people so hard on mine. And gang, the comments under that clip were insane. People were dragging up every handshake snub in NBA history trying to find a comparison. One fan straight up said it looked like Sochan wanted them dapping him up the way Draymond Green did LeBron James. after one of their playoff battles, basically calling out Wemby and the Spurs for not even giving him that bare minimum. Other people were firing right back, saying you can't bump a guy and run your mouth at him for an entire series and then expect a warm handshake 5 minutes later. That's a fair point too, NGL. Either way, that comment section turned into an actual debate stage, gang, and it was not calming down anytime soon. And listen, it wasn't every single guy on that team. A couple of the bigger names did stick around long enough to share a word with some Knicks players before heading inside. But that image, Sochan standing there with his hand out, getting nothing back, that's the one that spread everywhere. People online could not believe it. Guys around the league were calling it out directly, saying it was disappointing, saying it reflected badly on how that locker room handled the loss. And the comparison everybody kept making, Jalen Brunson, the finals MVP, the guy who just had the best game of his entire career, still made time to find the Spurs head coach and shake his hand. Meanwhile, several Spurs players couldn't even do that much for their own former teammate. Y'all seeing the difference here? That's wild. And gang, this is the part that really took it to another level. It wasn't just random fans on social media going crazy about this. We're talking about actual players around the league, guys with real voices in this sport, weighing in publicly on what they saw. People were straight up calling out the lack of sportsmanship, saying, you can be devastated after a loss. Sure, that's normal, but you gotta find it in you to shake a hand after a series that competitive. Every single game in that finals came down to the last minute, gang. Every game. That's not the kind of series where you just storm off without a word. And when guys around the league started piling on, that's when you knew this wasn't just a one-day story. This was turning into something that was going to follow that Spurs team into the offseason. What if I told you this wasn't even the first time this exact narrative followed Wembanyama this postseason? No cap, earlier in these playoffs he'd already drawn attention for skipping media availability after a tough loss in a different round, and he was sitting right at the edge of an automatic suspension because of flagrant foul points racked up during the series. So when this handshake situation happened, it didn't come out of nowhere for people who've been watching closely. It fit a pattern that was already forming. That's exactly why the reaction was so loud, gang, because people felt like they'd seen pieces of this story before, just never on a stage this big. Now here's the thing, gang, neither one of these guys has fully sat down and explained exactly what's going on between them. Wemby talked to reporters after the game about the series itself, about the lessons learned from losing on the biggest stage there is, but he never touched the handshake situation directly. And Sochan, he's let his actions speak instead, reaching his hand out after everything that happened, after the cold shoulder, after getting smacked away on live television. That says something on its own, even without him putting it into words yet. So where does this leave two guys who used to be absolutely inseparable? Honestly, gang, I don't know. Maybe this is one of those things that just cools off the second the emotion of losing a championship wears off. And a couple months from now, we see them right back to normal at All-Star Weekend, joking around like none of this ever happened. Athletes move on way faster than fans usually expect, no cap. Or maybe, and this is the part that's actually sad if you think about it, maybe this really was the moment that friendship quietly ended for good. A roster move neither one of them controlled, a scouting report that crossed the line, a shoulder bump and an ignored handshake that the entire basketball world is still talking about right now. Chat, I genuinely want to know what y'all think, because this is one of those situations where there's no clean answer. Is Wemby in the wrong for completely shutting his old friend out like that after everything they went through together? Or is Sochan the one who started all of this the moment he started feeding information to a brand new team about a guy who used to trust him completely? Because depending on how you look at it, both of these guys can be the villain in this story, or honestly, neither one of them has to be. Sometimes the league just does this to people. Sometimes business gets in the way of something that was actually real, and there's no bad guy at all. Just two guys caught up in the system that doesn't really care about feelings once the game starts. But here's what we do know for a fact. For 2.5 seasons, Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sochan were two of the closest guys in that San Antonio locker room. Two completely different backgrounds finding something real in each other during some genuinely rough years for that franchise. And then business did what business always does in this league, gang. It split them up, put them on opposite benches, and turned a real brotherhood into a viral story about a shoulder bump and a missed handshake. And that's everything you need to know about the Jeremy Sochan and Victor Wembanyama situation, gang. But yo, if you learned something new watching this, you gotta drop a like and let me know in the comments whose side you're on, because this comment section is about to be wild.